All right, so I've seen the comments recently. You guys are like, Benny, those comic book commentary videos that you're having so much fun making, well, you've been very negative lately, and we miss positive Benny. And you're right. I also miss positive Benny. Positive Benny is currently located over on Comicstorian. Go check out that channel. So I've brought Comicstorian Benny on over here to have a talk with you guys. And since, the last two videos were a bit negative, we did the Yawn of DC, where I said the Dawn of DC was just going too slow, which made it kind of boring, but it's super exciting when they do come out. And then I talked about how DC is just crushing Marvel right now by giving you hype and reasons to get excited. Right, those are both negative. So today I found something super positive, and it's a hard topic that we can all get behind. Bat penis. So today we're going to talk about Batman's penis and why it nearly broke DC, in what exactly happened and where I think we can go from there. So let me explain the bat penis before we get into anything, because I feel like that does need some explanation. You can't open a video by stating the words bat penis and not want to continue. So a little while ago, DC decided to launch their mature line. In order to understand why they would want to launch a mature line, let's have a look at the demographic for comic books. It's ages 8 to 60. I'm not joking. Okay, so the problem is, depending on who you talk to, comic books, superheroes in the MCU are for kids, okay? Like, I know every single one of you who watches this channel is a fan of comic books. I know at some point someone has told you, shouldn't you grow up and stop reading or watching or paying attention to comic books? Why do you want to go see the MCU movie? That's for kids. It's happened. It's happened to every person who likes comic books at some point, and most of us shrug it off. We don't really give a crap what other people think. Or you do, and you're not watching this channel anymore because you moved on to a different hobby. How's woodworking? Are you whittling like an adult? Anyway, you're probably wondering why that mentality came out of. Well, it's because the corporate overlords have decided that Batman, Superman, Wonder Woman, the DC world, and the Marvel world are really meant for children. They're not really meant for adults. The adults are on board. Of course they are. We buy all the giant statues. We buy the Hot Toys figures. We get the realistic stuff from McFarlane Toys. But more merchandise can be sold to kids easier because parents will buy stuff to shut their little rugrats up. That's proven. My parents did it. So what that means is that comic books and superheroes need to be available to be in Disney World. You need to have costume people there. We need to have backpacks with Batman on it. We need to have cartoon shows rolling out. Right now, we just came out with a new cartoon show, My Adventures with Superman, or My Buddy Superman, or Best Pals Forever, Lois Lane and Superman, or it's something like that. It's a really good show, but I'm not the demographic for it. I'm just enjoying it. It's quite obviously aimed for that 13 to 18-year-old demographic. Shows like Batman the Animated Series are kids' shows. Batman Brave and the Bold is a kids' show. That doesn't mean that they don't have incredible episodes aimed at adults who are also watching these shows. But it does mean we are not the demographic for these things. This goes all the way back to Batman 89. Batman 89 is one of the best Batman movies ever. No one has argued that Batman 89 is a bad movie. But Batman 89 wasn't able to sell toys. And while the movie was great, not selling toys is a problem for their corporate overlord, WB. So Batman Returns was intended to have more toy sales. Hence why we had Catwoman and Penguin and stuff like that. But Tim Burton still made it dark, brooding, and edgy. I'm pretty sure we looked into this, but I'm pretty sure there's no toy of the Penguin from that era because Danny DeVito's Penguin just looked nasty. You can find them now, okay? Before someone Googles it is like, here it is over at Sideshow. It exists now. But back then, it was a problem. It was such a problem that they couldn't even sell McDonald's toys without some kind of weird caveat. And I'm not going to go into that whole thing right now. But what it turned into is we got the lighter-toned, goofier Batman movies by Joel Schumacher. Batman Forever and Batman and Robin. It was all about the toys, the costume, how much merchandising can we sell? We want kids to have Batman on their backpack walking to school with Batman on a lunchbox, and then you're pulling out your Bat cereal or whatever you're doing. That's what they wanted. They wanted you to do that, okay? That's been an argument in the world of comic books forever because comics are not generally aimed at kids. Even in the 90s, they were aiming at your 16-year-old edgelords who just wanted to be cool. We had everyone being all, dark and brooding and edgy. You guys saw Across the Spider-Verse, right? Oh, you brought in a rush of emotions with my memories. That was a spoof on 90s comics. That's what that was. Comic books were always aimed at an older audience, even if the brand was not. And that is part of our problem. So we move forward, right? Comic book movies are getting more mature. We have The Dark Knight. We have the Batman Begins, The Dark Knight Returns. We have all that stuff. We have the MCU taking a more serious tone on it, but still keeping in quips. The MCU found a nice balance where adults can enjoy the comic book movies, but they're still kind of aimed at kids. Why do you think nothing truly serious and earth-shattering ever happens? Because if it goes too far, Disney doesn't want it. It doesn't allow them to sell toys. You can blame the existence of the current state of the MCU on that, which is why we don't have any deep and dark storylines. They tried to be more deep and dark with the DC stuff. Zack Snyder was definitely doing a darker tone, but at the end of the day, the argument with the studio was that they wanted it to be quippy. They wanted it to be able to sell toys. They wanted it to be a family affair. Okay? What I'm getting at here is comics have always been kind of darker, edgier, but the properties are not. You don't see a storyline about Spider-Man losing Mary Jane because she died due to radioactive poisoning because of his semen coming out on it. We're never going to see that movie. But you can read that comic. They're not going to bring in the new Batman and the Joker's going to show up and be like, "Hello, Batman, let me cut my face off." Not going to happen. But you can read that comic. Now, using this mentality, comics have always stayed at a much older demographic. As a matter of fact, I get asked a lot of times, where do I get comic books for kids? And sadly, you might have a comic book store that is really good at catering to that, but most of them aren't. Okay, and there is a caveat. There's always going to be a comic book store aimed at kids with the kids' comics in the front and center. Our comic book store has one rack with like 10 books on it that are aimed directly at kids. And part of that problem is because they just throw everything on the same shelf. You'll have a comic book of, Batman Brave and the Bold on a fun Batman adventure right next to the one where the Joker's cutting off his face, right next to an independent book called Sex Criminals about a girl who has sex and can stop time. How many of you are Googling Sex Criminals, the comic, right now? It is good. So that brings us to Black Label. Since comic books are generally aimed at adults, we have themes such as, Snowbirds Can Fly, in which the sidekick takes heroin. We have Bane breaking people's backs like they're freaking popcorn. We have Azrael running around with claws for hands. Everything Wolverine does. Everything. Mature adult. Like, everything. We have the X-Men having sex orgies and islands having sex right now. Why not go further with it? If all of this is acceptable in the world of comic books and your primary demographic is more 16 and older kind of a situation for reading comic books, well, we can fix that. You see, what's been going on recently is if you go to your local bookstore, a lot of the kids' comics are just straight up kids' graphic novels. So what DC and Marvel are trying to do is get the kids to buy the books when they go to the bookstore to buy their manga or their latest book. If you're like 10 years old, you'll often see your favorite kid's superhero right next to that. So if we're going to then make a comic book line that is aimed for 16 and older, and we have mostly an older audience, why don't we make DC Black Label? Black Label is going to be the mature line of comic books. It's going to be the comic book that is R-rated. And to prove that to you, we're going to have full frontal nudity Batman, and we're going to have topless Harley Quinn. On paper, great idea, okay? In execution, not so much. So Black Label's intention was to be out of continuity, R-rated storylines that are not ongoing. 5 issues of Batman Damned, 6 issues of White Knight, that kind of a situation. And then this is where the story gets a little muddled. Okay, so at the time of Black Label going out, Warner Brothers was dealing with stuff from their parent company. So if you don't know this, DC is like the shoe on a corporate ladder. They're at the bottom rung. DC is owned by Warner Brothers. Warner Brothers at the time was owned by AT&T. Now I think they're owned by Discovery or something. I don't even freaking know anymore. But they're not owned by AT&T anymore, but that doesn't matter. I think it's Discovery. Now I'm curious, but I think it's Discovery. But at the time, it was DC owned by Warner Brothers, and Warner Brothers is owned by AT&T. Now, Warner Brothers and AT&T just see DC as an IP farm where they can sell merchandising on their top characters, Batman, Superman, and Wonder Woman. The DC as a franchise as a whole is outside of that. They're all separate brands. We know that for a fact when they had a board meeting during the point when they were trying to sell, and they said one of the strongest pinnacles they had was the Batman brand, the Superman brand, the DC brand. They literally literally consider Batman and Superman separate from everything else. And I'm pretty sure Wonder Woman was also separate. And the reason is the merchandising. Just to give you an example of how important merchandising is, this is not the topic of the video, but you ever wonder why Disney has not bought back Spider-Man? They don't need him. That's the thing. And it's not because they've got a great cadre of awesome characters in the MCU. No, it's because Spider-Man as a merchandising franchise is in the billions regularly, while the movies are trying to break the billions. Yes, I know they have, and the movies are getting super successful now, but they weren't that big, and the merchandising always trumped it. While Marvel did sell Spider-Man to Sony, the merchandising was bigger, and I can guarantee you, Batman merchandising, Superman merchandising, and Wonder Woman merchandising trumps whatever they're doing in the comics. So DC had the idea of making this Black Label line. The first book to come out was Batman Damned. And in the first book, Batman Damned #1, Batman gets his butt kicked by the Joker. The whole storyline is pretty interesting. It's about Batman possibly killing the Joker or having died while killing the Joker and exploring that mental state. But he's so beat up that he returns to the Batcave, and as he gets off, as we all do when we come home from a fist fight, strips butt naked. You get to see the butt, the bat cheeks. Yeah, the bat cheeks. And then we go full frontal Bat-Wang. It's not explicit, like they don't like draw every pube on Batman, but you get to see the full outline. I'm thinking Batman might be shaved, but that's a totally different discussion. Anyway, immediately, DC got in a lot of hot water. Now, every article started talking about how the new Black Label line at DC was showing full frontal nudity Batman. DC immediately sent out an update to the digital comic, censoring it, and then recalled all the first comics. So if you happen to have one that shows the Bat-Wang is worth a pretty penny. But anyway, everything started going crazy for DC. Now, there's two thoughts of theory as to what happened here. The official word from DC in an interview is the reason they did the recall is they didn't intend for the Bat-Wang to get out. They were working on it as a possible idea to really get the headlines with Black Label. Hey, we'll do full frontal nudity Batman. People are going to see the news. They're going to go buy the comic. But they decided apparently at the last second to not do that because they didn't want all the headlines to be about nothing but Batman's penis. They felt that it would detract from the serious tone and nature of Black Label if every article was just like, and now we've seen Batman's penis. And isn't he well endowed? Ha 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 ha. Whether or not that's the truth, we'll never know, because apparently whatever they sent out as an update never went out, and the comic went to print and shipped with the Bat-Wang. Now, the rest of us think that what actually happened is they fully intended on releasing the Bat-Wang, but WB and AT&T weren't exactly on board because it goes back to the important factor. If Batman is getting articles that he is so mature that he is nude, WB and AT&T are worried that that will hurt sales of the toys. Has Batman gotten too mature for kids? We can't let them get Batman comics anymore. Batman might be nude. We can't let them go see Batman movies anymore. What if Batman strips naked? And we can't let them get a Batman toy anymore, because what if he's got that weird ability from the 90s where you'd flip a button on the back and the rocket comes up at the crotch? What if he's got that? And it's just the Bat penis. And that created a big problem, because then they censored the topless Harley Quinn comic book, which if you're curious about that one, how many of you just Googled it? Because you'll find it. And if you're curious, there was a third comic that was in talks to be released in this, which is why I don't think that this was actually not supposed to go out. But they were going to do the Bat-Wang, they were going to do the topless Harley Quinn, and then they were going to do the uncensored Killing Joke, which was going to show the actual nude pages of Barbara Gordon. Supposedly. All of this is supposedly. I'm just putting that out there. I don't have any evidence of this. But if you Google White Knight Harley Quinn topless, you will find that. And if you Google Killing Joke deleted pages or something along, you'll find that as well. So they exist, is all I'm saying. Now, quick question. How many of you Googled that and sex criminals in this video? Let me know in the comments down below. Engagement, baby! Anyway, that's where the point of this discussion is and where I'm getting to. Is Batman for adults or is it for kids? Obviously, WB and DC got scared at the last second and didn't want Batman's name to be tarnished. And I kind of understand that. Batman has been something that has had everything from cartoons. We literally have a show, which I think the demographic is 6-year-olds right now. It's Cars meets Batman. Batman and Robin are driving cars that talk. And it's literally chasing like an ice cream truck that's the Joker. Like, that's the show. So you've got Batman being targeted at like 6-year-olds, but at the same time, you've got grown adults with Batman statues, putting on Batman hoodies. We got video games like the Arkham series, which is definitely not geared at a 13-year-old kid. We got Gotham Knights, which is definitely not geared at a 13-year-old kid. But you've also got things like Multiversus where kids could play that because they use the classic Batman cartoon series. Who is Batman for? And the easy answer is Batman is for everybody. But does that mean that we shouldn't get R-rated Batman? We shouldn't, like, I'm pretty sure the Batman is R-rated. If it's not, I think the next one's going to be. Like, I'm not actually talking about legit R-rated, but does that mean that Batman shouldn't cross the threshold to do full frontal nudity, to tell those kinds of stories? It also brings up the subject does nudity add anything to a story? Like, is nudity needed in a movie to propel the plot forward? Is it needed in a Batman book? I'll tell you right now, the appearance of the Bat-Wang and the Batman Damned was not needed at all. That's why people don't know it existed, because it didn't hinder the story in any way, shape, or form. Having looked at the Harley Quinn pages, it didn't add anything to the story at all. As a matter of fact, the pages are actually in print. They just put the word balloons over the boobs. And I think that's where we are with this. This isn't going to be a negative video. I'm not crapping on it. My question is, who is Batman for? And I know some of you are parents, would you give your kid Batman products if you thought Batman might be nude in it? Like, that's the question we need to be asking ourselves, because that's what WB and AT&T at the time were worried about. Would you buy yourself your son or daughter, a Bat family product if there was also naked Batman and Bat family members running around out there? We're never truly going to find out the answer, because based on that, we are probably never going to see the Bat penis ever again. So I'm pretty sure that the whole discussion sealed itself. But it was something I was wondering about. Like, why was the Bat penis a big deal? And it really comes down to merchandising again and making sure that Batman can continue to sell billions of dollars of bat-symboled lunchboxes for kids to bring to school. But what is your opinion? I'd really like to know. And before we completely close out this video, I do have to do one last plug. This plug is for myself. If you think that I'm an interesting individual, boy, thank you, because I'm not. But check me out over at Dungeons & Ale. Me and my buddies are playing Dungeons & Dragons made-up homebrew games on the regular, and right now we're doing an Assassin's Creed campaign, and we're bringing out a Marvel Zombies campaign. We're trying to revitalize the Dungeons & Dragons channel, and would love for you to come and join that family. But on that note, let me know in the comments down below what you think about the situation. Should there be a Batman for every age? Should we have nude Batman? Should we have nude Harley Quinn? Should those stories exist? Or should we not worry too much about that and just tell solid Batman stories? Like right now in Night Terrors, Batman's got a bat with a gun on its head chasing him around. I wouldn't call that a kid's book, but, you know, to each their own. Everyone has different environments they grow up in. But either way, let me know your thoughts down below in the situation. And yeah, like, subscribe. I'll be back next week with another problem with the video. Maybe we'll talk about somebody else's penis. I don't know. I'm finding weirder and weirder things to talk about in the world of comics. Thank you guys. I'll see you next time.